My dad screamed, "You've never given this family anything," and told me to leave. So I did. A month later, my sister called crying, "Why did the tuition payment stop?" I texted, "Thought I never gave this family anything." Then I watched everything crumble without me. Hey there, I'm Eric, 29 years old. Up until last year, I thought I totally got what family was all about, not the cheesy greeting card stuff, but the kind you build your life around, even if it means pulling more than your fair share of weight. I've always been the quiet one, the responsible son. You know, the guy who remembers birthdays with flowers and fills in the gaps when no one else notices there's even a gap. But I never thought I'd end up being the rock of a family that sometimes made me feel like I was just another piece of furniture. That realization crept in slowly, like a quiet mystery happening right under my nose, until it all just fell apart. Growing up, I was the middle kid. My older brother, Adam, was the superstar, football, charm, and always surrounded by friends. My younger sister, Mia, was the little princess from day one. And then there was me, with my B+ grades, always told I wasn't pushing my potential. I didn't really mind, kept my head low, snagged a scholarship, moved out, and eventually started my own small IT firm. It was tough, 3 years of ramen, 16-hour days, and getting ignored by every investor. But then, somehow, things clicked, and my business took off. Funny thing, though, when I was hustling, my family was MIA, but once the money started rolling in, so did the requests for help. It started with Dad asking if I could cover the rest of Adam's car payments, just till he got that promotion. Then came Mia's private college expenses because the financial aid fell short. Mom needed help with the roof, then the heating, then her dream kitchen remodel. Next thing I knew, I was supporting 3 households, and still getting texts like, "Can you Venmo me for groceries?" Initially, I didn't mind. I was grateful to help. I even fooled myself into thinking I was creating something lasting, a legacy maybe. I thought I'd look back and feel proud of making life better for my loved ones. But, eventually, the way they acted like my help was expected started to get under my skin. Last Thanksgiving was when things shifted. I hosted, not to show off, but because I'd finally gotten a place big enough for everyone. I had it catered, cleaned up, even set a cozy fire pit in the backyard. No one offered to help, not even with the dishes. Adam gave a toast halfway through, talking about how lucky we all were to have each other and how family sticks together, never mentioning I paid for the whole thing. Mia brought her new boyfriend and was glued to her phone, and my dad spent the night reminiscing about how tough his days were and how easy kids have it now. I smiled through it, but inside, I was already drifting. Then came the Tuesday night that changed everything. I got home from a long meeting to a voicemail from Dad. His voice was sharp, carrying that dad-like chill when he's upset. He said, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything worth remembering. If you had any pride, you'd stop acting like we owe you and just leave." I was stunned, thought I misheard, so I played it again. "All you do is take." I didn't yell or call back. I just stared at the message for a while, then looked out at the city lights I used to adore. Something inside me broke, quietly, like an old hinge snapping. That night, I packed a bag and left. No dramatic goodbye, no announcement. I even had my assistant pause all family-related payments, just a smooth, silent break. 3 days passed, then a week, radio silence. No calls, no texts. It took them a month to realize I was gone. Mia called late one Friday, voice shaky, asking why her tuition didn't go through. I could hear the panic behind her fake calm. I replied with one text, "Thought I never gave this family anything." No follow-up, no explanation. She didn't respond. Within an hour, though, I had missed calls from my mom, Adam, and even a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail from my dad was darkly amusing. "Eric, we need to talk. Whatever this little stunt is, it's not funny. Your sister's future is on the line. No apology, just more demands, same old you owe us vibe." That weekend, I flew out to Denver. Never been there but needed to feel like I'd really escaped. Stayed in a cozy Airbnb with a view of the mountains and finally slept better than I had in ages. So, after not really taking a proper break for what felt like forever, I decided it was time to unplug. No emails, no messages, I just let everything keep spinning without me. Of course, things went south back home. Mia's school sent a letter about pulling her out because we hadn't paid, Adam's car got repossessed, and my parents' mortgage payment bounced. Suddenly, the whole foundation they built on my silence started crumbling. They began reaching out to the family, spreading their side of the story about how I supposedly cut them off and shirked my responsibilities. But here's the thing, lots of people already knew what was actually happening. Some of my cousins had seen this pattern for years. My cousin Emma, my mom's niece, sent me a message saying, "I've always admired how patient you are, but I'm glad you finally stopped being their safety net." That hit harder than I expected. I wasn't out for revenge, I just wanted peace. Once you take away their control, they realize they need you more than you ever needed them. I spent a week in Denver, mainly doing nothing. Each morning, I'd walk to this tiny coffee shop by my Airbnb, do some journaling, and then just wander around downtown. It was weird at first, getting used to the calm, no buzzing phone or anyone asking for one more favor. By the second week, I rented a car and drove to Boulder. I hiked alone, something I'd always wanted to do. Each time I tried to plan a trip, someone in the family needed cash for a busted AC or a late credit card payment. Once, Mia called from a resort in Cancun, saying she lost her wallet and needed emergency cash. That memory popped into my head as I stood on the edge of a trail, the valley stretching out below me. I actually laughed out loud, and it echoed off the rocks. After 3 weeks, my mom finally contacted me with something other than passive-aggressive voicemails. She sent an email with the subject line, "We need you to come home." No greeting, just a wall of text starting with "I don't know what's gotten into you," then spiraling into "Your father is furious," and ending with "Family doesn't abandon family." I just stared at it. Family doesn't abandon family, huh? Because they did, every time they treated me like a walking ATM, forgetting birthdays, taking money without saying thanks, while I sat in the background at holidays. They didn't call it abandonment, they called it tradition. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Daniel, who helped me set up a trust fund years ago. I asked him to start transferring my educational contributions to a scholarship program for first-gen college students, people who wouldn't just laugh behind my back while emptying my bank account. I also asked him to check who was on the deed for the lake house. Turns out, my name was still there, so I made a decision. That Sunday morning, I booked a flight home, not to make nice, but to get some receipts. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. When I landed, I got a rental car and drove straight to the house. It was the same house where I helped fix water damage when Dad threatened to sell it. It still looked the same, familiar yet fake, like a movie set. Adam's old pickup was there too, probably because he moved back in after the repo. I didn't knock. I just used the spare key my mom forgot I had. Standing in the hallway, I overheard them talking. Adam's voice came through first, saying I was being dramatic and would come crawling back. Mia chimed in, wondering why I was doing this since it wasn't much money to me. Then my dad said, loud and clear, that I'd always been the weakest, hiding behind my computer, acting like money made me special. Standing there, listening to them tear me apart, I didn't feel angry, just confirmed in what I already knew, they never really saw me. I quietly backed out and headed to the lake house. So, picture this, I walked through the front door and took a long, hard look at the open-plan kitchen. My eyes landed on that wall of family photos, the ones where I was noticeably absent. Right then, I started snapping pics for the real estate listing. By the time the sun went down, my lawyer had everything he needed to kick off the sale. That was Saturday. Fast forward to Monday, I sent out one last message in the family group chat. I basically said, "You guys always acted like I didn't contribute to this family, so here's the distance you've wanted. No more tuition, car payments, or roof repairs from me. Good luck with your memories, I'm out." Then I ditched the group chat and blocked every single one of them. I thought that was it, but boy, was I wrong. I didn't realize just how tangled up they all were with my support. Within a week, Mia was on the verge of getting kicked out of school, and Adam got fired because he missed too many shifts trying to sort things out. As for my parents, their bank started calling about a mortgage they couldn't handle anymore. Meanwhile, I was already on my way to the airport, heading for a fresh start in Tokyo, first class, guilt-free, and no strings attached. The real kicker? The mess they made trying to reel me back in. I was somewhere over the Pacific when my phone lit up with all the chaos I'd left behind. Missed calls galore and a bunch of voicemails from numbers I'd never seen before, probably Mia's friends, or maybe people trying to guilt-trip me on the family's behalf. My dad sent some texts that started as threats but quickly turned into these desperate, half-finished sentences, like "We didn't mean it that way and you're still our son." That one made me laugh. I didn't listen to any voicemails or open any attachments. I just watched the notifications pile up like a silent slideshow of panic. Funny how people suddenly remember how much you've done for them once you stop. Tokyo was just what I needed, clean, peaceful, anonymous. I wandered through temples, got lost in neon-lit arcades, and let my mind take a breather like never before. No guilt, no surprise emergencies. For the first time, I was just me. I wasn't the family's backup plan or fixer anymore. 2 weeks into the trip, I only unblocked one person, my cousin Emma. She'd sent just one message during all the drama, simply saying, "When you're ready to talk, I'm here, not to convince you, just to listen." When I got back, I met up with Emma at a cafe near her place. She brought her laptop and said, "I want to show you something." It was a Reddit thread Mia had posted under a fake account, asking for money to stay in school after a so-called family emergency. She made me out to be the unstable one, claiming I ditched the family for no reason, like I was having some breakdown. Strangers were actually donating money, and she'd raised almost $6,000. Emma looked at me with a tight-lipped expression. I felt this twist in my stomach, not anger, just sadness. Mia was spinning the victim story again, but this time she was doing it publicly and making money off strangers' sympathy. Worst of all, she still didn't get what she had done. I didn't go on a rage rant or call her out directly. Instead, I quietly gathered every payment I'd made toward her education, bank transfers, tuition receipts, even that textbook fund I'd wired during her freshman year. I uploaded them to a private Imgur album with no names, no dramatic captions, just dates, dollar amounts, and payment confirmations. Then I posted a single anonymous comment on the thread: "Before you donate, maybe ask where the other $90,000 went." Some people forget who helped them when the help stops. It didn't go viral, but it didn't need to. Within 24 hours, her post got taken down by moderators for suspicious activity, and the comments started turning. That was the first real consequence they faced. The second came a week later when I got a certified letter at my office. It was from my dad, typed up like it was some legal document. It started with, "We are formally requesting a meeting to discuss the breakdown of our family dynamic." I almost choked from laughing. It was like they wanted to hold a board meeting to fix what they'd broken. But the real reason for reaching out was buried in all that lawyer speak. They wanted a slice of the profits from the lake house sale, claiming they had emotional equity in it. I passed the letter to Daniel, who read it and smirked, "Want me to remind them that emotional equity doesn't hold up in court?" I nodded, and we did one better. We sent them a copy of the original agreement my dad had signed years ago when I first offered to pay for the lake house, clearly stating in his own words. So, I had to admit that the house was bought by Eric and still belonged to him. I gave up any claims he might have forgotten or hoped I'd overlook. That letter definitely shut people up quickly, but the quiet didn't last long. As soon as folks heard I was selling the main house too, things got noisy again. See, when I was in Tokyo, Daniel and I were quietly working on a side project. Turns out, a long time ago, I lent my parents a big chunk of money with just a verbal agreement. They couldn't keep up with the mortgage and never paid me back. Daniel tracked every deposit and wire transfer, and we slapped a lien on the house. They owed me over $80,000, so I could legally force a sale. Emma called me one night, saying, "Eric, they're freaking out. Your mom called mine, crying, and your dad's threatening to post on social media." I just sighed and said, "Let him. I've got all the proof. Let's see who loses that public relations battle." What I didn't tell Emma was that this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. Because they didn't get it, I gave them everything: my time, my savings, my loyalty. They saw it as weakness and thought they could just use me whenever they needed something. Now, they were about to learn what it feels like to go without. But honestly, the most satisfying part hadn't even happened yet. The day of the auction, I parked across the street from the house one last time. The air had that crisp, chilly vibe that always hit the neighborhood in early fall. I sat in the car for a minute, just watching the house. It was surreal seeing the place where I grew up, a place full of memories, both happy and bitter, now with a foreclosure notice staked in the lawn. I got out and slowly walked in, hands in my pockets. The door was open, and Daniel was inside, talking to this middle-aged woman who was the auction rep. When he saw me, he said, "You don't have to be here for this," but I told him I wanted to be. Not for revenge or drama, but because this moment needed a witness, someone to truly see and feel it, not just let it pass by like everything else I'd forced myself to ignore over the years. I wandered through the living room, soaking it all in one last time. There was a dent in the hardwood from when Adam threw a baseball indoors, and a faded stain on the carpet from when Mia blamed me for spilling nail polish. The wall where my parents used to pin up our report cards and drawings, until they just stopped adding mine, was still there. It was strange how little of myself I saw in that house, like I was just a ghost in my own family story. Walking into the kitchen was tougher. I remembered late nights helping Mom cook for holiday dinners, scrubbing dishes while she pretended not to hear Dad ranting from the other room. Laughing with Emma over burnt pies and undercooked turkeys. Now, it was just a kitchen, a box of walls and forgotten efforts. There was even a family photo on the counter from 2 Christmases ago, one that I paid for, with their matching outfits and everything. They had the nerve to crop me out when they posted it online. I picked up the photo, looked at it for a long moment, then turned it face down. By noon, people started arriving. A few serious bidders, some nosy neighbors, and then finally, my family showed up. They all crammed into Dad's old Chevy like it was some weird family road trip. Mia was first out, with red-rimmed eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Adam followed, looking grumpy as if he was there just to play backup for Dad. My parents looked different too. Mom seemed about 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her, and Dad still walked like he owned everything he set foot on. He spotted me right away and called out, "Eric, we need to talk now." I didn't move as he and Adam came over. "You're really doing this?" Dad said, his voice low and angry. "Going to humiliate your own family over what, exactly? Some perceived slight?" I met his eyes for the first time in years and calmly replied, "It's not a slight. It's a pattern, and it ends today." He started to say something nasty, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Don't. Just don't." Mia joined them, her voice cracking, saying, "I'm going to lose my scholarship because of this. I had to drop 2 classes already. Why are you doing this to us?" I turned to her and said, "I paid for your first 3 years, every tuition bill, every textbook. You never even said thank you once. Instead, you let them convince you I was the problem." She tried to argue. I didn't, but I was ready. I pulled out my phone and told her, "You posted online that I was unstable. You lied to strangers. You know, for the longest time, it was all about money, and now they're looking for some sympathy?" When my mom finally spoke, her face was a bit crumpled. She said in a serious voice, "Eric, families don't do this to each other." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly. Families don't just take and take like this. You guys took everything I had, my time, my money, my trust. And when I finally decided to stop giving, you called me selfish." Right then, the auctioneer announced in this crisp, business-like tone that the auction was starting in 5 minutes. My dad was suddenly looking a bit unsure of himself as he glanced around and said, "You can't do this. You wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for us." I looked at him and said, "You're right, and that's why I'm taking it back." They just stood there on the driveway, completely stuck, and for the first time in years, completely helpless. I walked away, and an hour later, the house was sold to this nice retired couple from out of town who wanted a place close to their grandkids. They paid every penny up front. I signed the paperwork, handed over the keys to Daniel, and that was it. No looking back. 3 weeks later, the moving truck showed up. My parents tried to fight it, claiming they had rights, but the court order was pretty clear. They had 30 days from the sale date, no wiggle room. They didn't even pack everything, just grabbed whatever they could, leaving heaps of stuff behind, years worth of clutter, boxes of old trophies, broken down appliances, and forgotten memories. One of the movers found an old journal of mine in a box labeled junk. It must have been from high school. I flipped through it and saw pages full of goals I'd set for myself: get into college, start a business, buy a house, take care of my family. Funny how those dreams didn't quite pan out the way I'd imagined. I ended up donating the furniture and trashing the rest. Emma helped me wrap up the estate. She was the only one who stayed neutral through this whole ordeal and the only person I trusted. When it was all finished, she gave me a long hug and said, "You did the right thing, even if it doesn't feel that way yet." She was right, it didn't feel like a huge victory. No dramatic scene with applause, just this silence that eventually turned into peace. Shortly after everything settled, I moved to a new place, a loft in a different city. It was smaller and simpler, but it was all mine. No secret bills, no guilt hanging over me. The calls stopped coming, the emails dried up, and even the bitterness faded over time. I didn't hate them, I just detached. It was like finally cutting loose the last bit of a frayed rope that had been pulling me under for years. One night, while sipping tea on my balcony and watching the lights flicker across the street, I thought back to our last Thanksgiving. I remembered Adam's toast and how they all acted like they were in a TV commercial, completely unaware that the bond holding us together was falling apart. And then it hit me, they were never really a family. They were more like a system that only worked as long as I stayed quiet, stayed useful, kept myself small. Now, they had to figure out how to stand on their own. A few months down the line, I got an email from Mia. She said she didn't expect a response, but just wanted to say she understood now and was sorry. I read it a couple of times and then archived it. Not out of spite or anything, but because I didn't need closure from them anymore. I already found it within myself. For the first time ever, that was enough. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real life stories happening around you.